Must be them, huh? Must be them. No thanks.
You good?
We're so passionate about it. He's a feel-good guy. He's not going to raise taxes. Amazon, Delta, all these people, they're going to pay federal taxes. That's where you're going to get your money from.
Could you please gather around? Hello, hello, can you hear me? Just gather around, please. And thank you, everyone. Where are you going, Sophia? So, thank you, everyone, for attending. It's the third, not the fourth, Women March in Washington, San Antonio. How are you feeling? Are we feeling energetic? Okay, my name is Sophia Sepulveda. I'm a healthcare justice organizer for Texas Organizing Project.
My name is Sophia Zawani. I'm an organizer for this is my second year helping organize the San Antonio Women's March.
As we know this year, it's a very important year for us women. It is a year for our elections. And we need to make sure we need to get rid of Trump. We need to make sure we protect our immigrant communities. We need to make sure we protect our Black brothers and sisters. We need to make sure we protect our trans community who face violence on a daily basis. This is not just a light year. You need to come out and vote, not just in the primaries. You need to vote on the general election because we need what? To get rid of Trump. Get rid of Trump. Get rid of Trump.
Okay. Thanks.
I want to, it's not going to be a big rally, so thank you everyone for being here with us at the march. I want to introduce our first speaker. One of the things that we decided at the march to talk about was climate, immigration, and worker rights. I am a healthcare justice organizer. I find healthcare as a basic human right. We need to make sure that our people, especially our Latino community, is able to seek treatment at no cost and moment of service. And it's important because our women are dying. Not just Latino women, Black women are dying in Texas at a high rate. Maternal mortality rate in Texas on Black and brown women are higher than almost every other. We're actually number 7. But it is important that we fight and we vote for healthcare. We vote for climate. We need to leave our children a future. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker. She has been organizing on climate for a while now. She works right now for the public citizen, and she's all around badass. Please welcome Lila Morales.
Good morning. Every day on the news,
That too.
we're hearing about the impacts that climate change, the climate crisis is having on our communities and on our ecosystems. We hear about wildfires constantly in California and most recently in Australia. Droughts here in Texas, floods in the Midwest. 2019 was the hottest year on record next to 2016. Our communities of color, our indigenous communities, the working poor are facing the worst impacts of climate change, and yet we contribute the least to the climate crisis. And yet our government is failing to act on the science to protect us from climate change. The global science community is saying that we're just around the corner from furthering this climate crisis. This administration, along with the Environmental Protection Agency, headed by a former coal lobbyist,
is dismantling every safeguard that we have to protect our air, to protect our water, to protect the land that our indigenous relatives, that our indigenous sisters have been coexisting with since day one. Even our own governor dismisses the science around climate change. After Hurricane Harvey hit, our governor refused to believe that maybe climate change worsened the impacts of the hurricane. Every day that our leaders, whether it's at the federal government, at the state level, or at the city level, fails to act on climate, robs us of a habitable planet. It's robbing your kids' future. It's robbing your kids' future. We've got to stop it because our communities are hurting. And we don't have to look far to see that even San Antonio is contributing to the climate crisis. In our own backyard, we have 2 coal plants that emit millions of metric tons of carbon pollution into the air that we breathe. State data shows that San Antonio, among all other cities in Texas, has some of the relatively high rate of children going to the hospital, to the emergency room, to urgent care clinics because of asthma attacks. And yet CPS Energy wants to continue to burn those dirty coal plants. No. It's an injustice that our communities of color, that the poor, that our senior citizens are having to take on the health burden, the economic burden of continuing polluting our air. Yet CPS Energy wants to keep on burning those dirty coal plants. Texas leads the nation in wind-generated electricity. We're coming up when it comes to solar. What that means is San Antonio can lead this state, can lead the country in transitioning from dirty fossil fuels to clean renewable energy. Clean renewable energy that provides good, safe jobs as compared to what big oil is doing to this planet, is doing it to our relatives. If I sound like I am being very dire and doomish, I am. Because it's true, because the scientific community is telling us that we don't act now, if we don't wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, if we don't stop carbon emissions, the next 10 years, it's going to look pretty bad for our planet. You know, for our kids, for our grandkids. But I can't leave without giving us some hope, because there are movements trying to stop this, and they're being led by women. Young Greta started protesting. She skipped school to protest to bring national attention in Sweden to the climate crisis. But it also brought international recognition. There's an old lady named Jane Fonda who every single week, every single Friday in our nation's capital will strike and sometimes gets arrested to bring attention to the climate crisis. We have indigenous sisters in the global south in Brazil and Ecuador that are fighting their corrupt governments, that are fighting greedy corporations to stop the extraction on their ancestral lands, exploiting their lands, polluting their air, polluting the water. That impacts us here in the United States also. If we're going to close those coal plants, it's going to take all the women in this group to do it. And we can do it. But we need you